Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another sports edition of the Outspoken podcast, coming at you through the airways of the Upper Mike Broadcast Network, and as always, from the second floor of the Memorial Student Center, better known as the MSC. Thank you all so much for joining us. Have another jam-packed show for you today. Another jam-packed show for you today. A lot of things are happening in the world of sports. And guess what? It doesn't even have anything to do with the game itself. And that's what's getting frustrating for me. Because as sports broadcasters, as sports analysts, as sports commentators, all we really want to do is focus on the game itself. But because of politics and because of everything else that transpires in the world of sports, not even dealing with the game itself, but because it is so important, we have to discuss it anyway. And unfortunately, we have to do so as well here on the sports edition of Outspoken for today's podcast. But we're going to get into those subjects a little bit later. But as always here on Outspoken, we're going to kick things off with college football. A lot of college games happened over the weekend, but there's only one in particular that I really want to focus on for this particular portion of the show, and that's Penn State and Ohio State. This game was a game that I seriously was looking forward to this entire weekend. And Penn State, I have to say this for the record, because I've been an advocate for Penn State and Saquon Barkley for a long time, and they let me down this Saturday. Penn State losing to Ohio State by the score of 38-39. After being down 35-20 at the end of the third quarter, Ohio State scores 19 points in the fourth quarter, led by that bad man himself, that bad man himself, that is J.T. Barrett, the quarterback of the Ohio State Buckeyes. Yes, J.T. Barrett, I am joined by a very special guest of mine. Go ahead. What's up, Aaron? How you doing? I know that you was kind of sniffling earlier in the library, and then you said you weren't feeling too well. So I just saw you walking by. I just saw you looking. I have my radio show and everything like that. I know you on the radio show as well with our friend Alex Goodwin himself. But you're a sports expert. I know you are, Aaron. I see you walking around. A lot of people talk highly of you. They really do. They say you know your sports and you know everything like that. Now, we're specifically talking about Penn State and Ohio State that happened this past weekend. Now, the running back for Penn State, Saquon Barkley, we all know that he's one of the top candidates to win the Heisman Trophy this year. And he was stopped by the Ohio State Buckeyes defense this past Saturday. And Aaron, when I mean stopped, he was held under 50 yards rushing this Saturday. No, it doesn't sound good at all. It's not good at all. He was held under 50 yards rushing. Ohio State makes a fourth quarter comeback. By the end of the third quarter, they were down by 15 points, 35-20 to be exact. They scored 19 unanswered points in the fourth quarter to win it 39-38. It was just an unbelievable game. But while I have you here on the show, now I'm not sure if you watched that game or not, but I know you watch some college football or just football in general. As of now, in college football, what team is strongly standing out to you at this point? It could be any team, just any team that you've observed up to this point. Who has seriously really stood out to you?
On the show with Alex, we're always talking about Texas, but they ain't doing nothing. They're a little bit trash,
Texas is the basis of your basis in terms of college football. I mean, I'm a Longhorn fan myself, but
right.
Texas, Lord have mercy.
Exactly.
I mean, y'all don't talk about Alabama. Y'all don't talk about Georgia. The real top teams in the top five. Texas.
TCU.
And they got disappointed this Saturday, too. We're going to get to them just a little bit. But in terms of a real strong team. And we all know Alabama is the number one team in college football in terms of the FBS. We know that. Like, that's out of the question.
Right.
From your observation, like, I seriously want to know this. Is there any team that can either beat Alabama or can even just match up with them just on the field? Like, I seriously want to know, through week 10, anybody.
How's Clemson doing? How's Clemson doing?
They're doing all right. They're doing all right. They're still in the top 10. You know, they jumped down from the top 5 a couple of weeks ago. But, I mean, anybody. Can it be Penn State? Can it be Ohio State, Georgia? I mean, it's really from your
Georgia
observation.
State?
No. University of Georgia. Georgia Bulldogs.
Oh, the Dogs. Okay.
Is there really anybody that's other than Alabama that's really standing out to you that can match them? I mean, or are they really just that team?
They might just be that team, you know.
Oh, Aaron,
they might just be.
There got to be somebody. Don't get me wrong. The Roll Tide, they're great. They're excellent. But come on, there's got to be anybody.
I mean,
there's got to be anybody.
How is Georgia looking this year? Actually,
they're great. They're undefeated. Have not lost a game yet.
Alabama, they lost. They haven't lost either.
No,
I didn't think they lost a game. So it had to be Georgia and Alabama. I mean, those two schools now.
Those are two schools.
I mean, because Clemson fell down. I mean, they did good last year. I think it was right. Last year they did good.
Won the championship.
Exactly.
And actually beat Alabama.
Exactly.
Now that was led by Deshaun Watson, who's now playing for the Houston Texans right now, doing work.
Right.
And we'll get into that a little later on and everything like that. Did you watch that game by chance?
No, but I think they won.
Yes. No, they did not win.
They didn't?
They did not win. They played the Seattle Seahawks. That game went down to the wire.
They lost. I seen that score.
That game went down to the wire. Deshaun Watson and Russell Wilson, it went down to the wire, but they came up short, though.
The Seahawks. I remember seeing that because I saw a post about Sierra.
Now we're just going to quickly jump down before I have you on the show. It looked like you was in a hurry to get where you got to go. So before I let you go, I'm sure you've been watching Deshaun Watson, the way he's been playing throughout the week. I know you and Alex have talked about him on the show on the fifth quarter on several occasions. So I just want to get your take and your opinion on the way that Deshaun Watson has been playing so far this season as a rookie.
Right.
As a rookie, I just want to get your take on the way, or how do you feel that he's been playing this far?
I feel like that he has a lot of kind of like responsibility on him because, like you said, he's a rookie and he's just coming like out of college and he's been held to a higher title because he's, like we were just talking about, coming from Clemson. They're coming to the Texans when they've been trashed.
Yeah.
So now you're trying to like get used to it. So I think he's doing okay. He just has to warm up to the team and get better fit with them. These past couple of games, he's been doing better.
Absolutely.
So he's improving, and I'm not a Texans fan, but I am a black person fan.
Oh, me?
So.
I'm a black person. That's a funny observation right there. And you're right. He has been playing well. He's been playing great. In terms of the expectations that you mentioned that he has to take upon himself once he comes into the league, being fresh out of college. And I was just going to throw this out. You know, he didn't really plan on coming to Houston. You know,
right?
He could have been in Cleveland, or he could have been at the New York Jets because they picked before Houston did, and his name was still on the list. So when he came in, as you mentioned, I still feel like there were a lot of expectations of him because let's just really just throw this out there. The quarterback position at Houston has just been horrible, you know, up to this point. You know, the fact that Deshaun Watson was still on the list when they selected him, it was just an eye opener. Like it was like an angel sent from heaven.
Basically.
Because even when he came, even though it was to the Houston Texans, he was still behind Tom Savage.
Yeah.
Who they need to get rid of as soon as possible.
Yeah.
I feel like they should have started the season with Deshaun Watson, but that's neither here nor there. But,
right.
I mean, yeah, he's came in. He's came in the league, and he's been doing great up to this point. There's a little topic that I'm going to talk about in terms of the Houston Texans, Deshaun Watson, in comparison to Dak Prescott a little bit later on in the show.
You know Dak. You know the Cowboys. That's my team.
Don't even get me started on that.
That's my team right there.
Don't even get me started on that right there. But, yeah, 'cause that's my team, too. And I'm going to talk about them, too. They did their thing against the Washington Redskins this Sunday. I have to show my team some love. But I definitely appreciate you coming. I've been trying to get you on here for a while.
I know it's been a minute.
Yeah, I guess it had to be the spur of the moment type thing. That's the only way I can finally get you on the show. So I definitely thank you for coming. We have about over 2,000 listeners that listen to this podcast. So before you go, you want to tell them where they can reach you on social media and everything like that. You know, I don't know if you're that type of person. I know everybody come on the radio like to plug their social media and the Facebook and Twitter and stuff like that. So I'm gonna let you have the floor with that one.
All right. Again, my name is Erin Haven. You can find me on Twitter at Erin ERIN24 Haven HAVEN, and you can find me on Instagram at NICOLE 324.99.
And you can also find her part of the Fifth Quarter Sports Radio Show. I believe that's the name of it, right?
Oh, you talking about the game plan with Alex?
The game plan. Forgive me. The game plan with Alex Goodwin. You can also find her on that radio show on PVU No Radio. I believe y'all come on at 7:30 on Tuesdays.
Yeah. Oh, we come 6 on Tuesdays.
At 6 on Tuesdays. Download the TuneIn app and listen to Erin on the game plan with Alex Goodwin only on PVU No Radio. She does her thing for that as well. I've been hearing positive things about you, that you've improving every single week, and that's not just me. That's not just me. I've heard that you are seriously improving with that every single week. Your future is mighty bright in this field, Erin. So keep up the good work.
Thanks, guys. Y'all are amazing. I wouldn't have the opportunity without you or Alex. So thank you.
No problem.
Y'all have a great night.
No problem. Thank you so much for joining us, talking about Deshaun Watson and those guys. So we're going to jump back up to college football because there's still some things I wanted to get off my chest in terms of this game that Penn State just blew at the hands of Ohio State and that quarterback J.T. Barrett. I mean, don't get me wrong. The guy is great. He's phenomenal. He's unbelievable. But there's no way that Penn State should have lost this game. J.T. Barrett finished the game 33 of 39 for 328 yards, 4 touchdowns, and no interceptions. And he also had 17 carries for 95 yards because the running game really wasn't working for Ohio State. It wasn't working for Penn State either, but it certainly wasn't really working for them in terms of their running back and everything like that. But J.T. Barrett, on the other hand, had 17 carries for 95 yards at the quarterback position. He also threw for 328 yards and 4 touchdowns. And again, no interceptions. That's called being mistake-free and stepping up in big games when it counts. A game like that improves your chances of going higher in the draft positions when it's time for the draft. Games like that, when you can show up for the big games like J.T. Barrett did against Penn State and not only show up but lead your team to a victory and be mistake-free in the process, that right there improves your chances when the draft comes. I'm just throwing it out there. He hits Marcus Bow with a 16-yard touchdown pass with 1 minute and 48 seconds left in the fourth quarter. And again, they stopped Saquon Barkley. That is still the deal breaker with me. Saquon Barkley finished with 21 carries for 44 yards. He did have a touchdown. I believe he had a 36-yard run. That was his biggest run of the entire night. But nonetheless, for the entire ball game, he was only averaging 2.5 yards a carry. That, in terms of Saquon Barkley and the Penn State offense, that right there is highly, highly unusual. And we want to hear from you in terms of what you have to say about that. So the call-in number is 469-474-9370. Again, that's 469-474-9370. 15 minutes past the hour. Again, we are 15 minutes past the hour here for our sports edition of our Outspoken podcast. And we're talking college football. Now, to segue from that, the question I asked last week on the show, who do you want to face Alabama? Who do you want to face? Who do you want to see face Alabama? Now, last week, I only had two teams in mind. Two teams, possibly a third team, and I'm going to get into that here in just a second. But two teams I had in mind, Penn State and Georgia. The Penn State Lions and the Georgia Bulldogs were my two teams. Now, I don't know. I seriously don't know. I'm not saying that I'm ruling Penn State out, but in terms of my top three, they have now moved after that loss, that devastating loss. It was a big loss. That's the problem. It wasn't just a loss. It was a big loss to Ohio State, in my opinion, because of the way that they lost. The way that they lost does not do it for me going forward. Now they've moved from number 1 to number 3. Moving up to that number 1 spot will be Georgia, and number 2 will be Ohio State. Georgia is seriously balling this year. The most they've given up this entire season was 19 points, and that was against Notre Dame in the early part of the season. And Ohio State, based on what I saw Saturday, there's really only one true blemish on their record, thanks to Oklahoma in the early part of the season. I still have my thoughts about that in Oklahoma and that entire program, but that's neither here nor there. But the true test from Ohio State that has now pushed them up in the category in terms of number 1, number 2, as far as who I want to face Alabama, the true test for them, in my opinion, came from Penn State. Because let's just be honest, they've been whipping up on teams up to this point, teams that really don't even matter, in my opinion, in terms of Urban Meyer coach team that is Ohio State Buckeyes. I mean, before they were whooping up on teams like Nebraska, Maryland, Rutgers, UNLV, Army. You know, teams that, I mean, don't get me wrong, they're excellent ball clubs. But in terms of a team like Ohio State, those teams aren't even worth being mentioned in the same breath as Ohio State. They've been whipping up on teams like that, and it wasn't until this Saturday when they faced Penn State that allowed me to say, okay, this is going to be a true test of Urban Meyer and this entire Ohio State Buckeyes. And they got the job done, again, led by the quarterback himself, J.T. Barrett. And I'm just going to be honest with you. I know everybody talks about Baker Mayfield, quarterback for Oklahoma, and how great he is and everything like that. And I get all that. I understand it. The dude does some great things on the field in terms of through the air and on the ground. He's really turned into a mobile quarterback, which is something that you need going to the professional level, that is the NFL. I understand all that. You need to be versatile. I get it. But let's just be honest. The Ohio State Buckeyes would not be where they are right now if it wasn't for J.T. Barrett. Let's just be honest with that. I'm just throwing it out there. I stand strongly behind that. His numbers speak for himself. His efficiency speaks for himself. How elite he is as a player, it speaks for itself. There's really nothing else I can say. If it wasn't for J.T. Barrett, Ohio State wouldn't be they are at this point, and certainly at this point in the season. They're 7-1 right now. I mean, after one blemish on their and honestly, that game against Oklahoma early part of the season, they just had a bad game. They really just had a bad game because they've improved and have been winning like they're supposed to do up to that point. And as I keep reiterating, this past Saturday was their true test, and they passed the test. They certainly did. They certainly passed the test. So, honestly, as of right now, it's Georgia and Ohio State. Now, I understand in the game of football, things change throughout the week and everything like that, but in terms of consistency, I have now moved up Georgia, who has been consistent all year long, and Ohio State to number 2 based off the way that they played last year. And we are 20 minutes past the hour here on Outspoken. The call-in number, again, 469-474-9370. As I mentioned in the early part of the show, we have a jam-packed show for you today. A lot of things to get into. And as we quickly wrap up college football, the top 10 polls as of week 10, Alabama at number 1, Georgia at number 2, Ohio State moves up to number 3 after winning this past weekend against Penn State, Wisconsin at number 4, Notre Dame at 5, Clemson at 6. Penn State drops to number 7 after losing this weekend. Oklahoma at 8. They still lingering in the top 10, I understand. Miami at 9, and TCU at 10. TCU drops. I just want to quickly throw this out there. TCU drops from number 4 to number 10 after losing to Iowa State 14-7 this past Saturday. They're still in the top 10, but they dropped 6 spots from losing to Iowa State by the score of 14-7 this past Saturday. Kenny Hill, he didn't have a good game this past Saturday. I mean, I believe he was 12 for 25 for 135 yards, and he threw 2 interceptions, no touchdown whatsoever. He did not have a good game, and ultimately TCU ends up losing to Iowa State by a score of 14-7, and they drop from number 4 to number 10. But I just want to throw this out here. Before we jump into the NFL, I just want to throw this out here. What's the deal with Iowa State this season? Really? Can somebody really explain this to me? What is the deal with them this season? They're just ruining everybody's weeks. And why? I really want to know why. Why? Well, they want everybody to be miserable like they was last year, and they want to ruin everybody's week. I mean, they ruined Texas' week in the early part of the season. They ruined Oklahoma's week. They're the only loss on Oklahoma's record. I mean, the only loss on Oklahoma's record came from them. They ruined Texas Tech's week, and now TCU. The Iowa State Cyclones are 6-2 this year. 6-2. A team that went 3-9 last week is now 6-2. And unfortunately, because we have to move on, we could quickly line it out and go for detail as to how they went from 3-9 to 6-2 this year. I mean, in terms of new recruits that they got and the new system and everything like that. But unfortunately, we do not have time. But I just want to throw this out there. I just want to throw that out there. They're just ruining everybody's week. And I don't understand why. I really don't understand why. But let's get off into the NFL. And here is where it gets tricky. If you're just now tuning in, I mentioned in the early part of the show, a lot of things are transpiring in the world of sports that does not have to, and it doesn't even have to do with the game itself. And again, something that I've mentioned before, as sports commentators, as sports analysts, sports broadcasters, truly, all we really want to do is focus on the game itself. X's and O's, game planning, how they won, how they lost, what they did do, what they didn't do. That's all we really want to focus on. All we really want to focus on is analyzing the game itself, but unfortunately, these things keep popping up, and we have to address it. We just have to. So nonetheless, here we go. Bob McNair, the owner of the Houston Texans, said something last week that has created a lot of controversy in the world as of today. During a meeting of NFL owners, Bob McNair said, and I quote, "We can't have inmates running the prison." And in response to the owner, Bob McNair, majority of the players kneeled during the national anthem. The Houston Texans, to be exact, when they faced the Seattle Seahawks this Sunday. Majority of the players kneeled during the national anthem in response to Bob McNair. Honestly, I'm not really going to even get off into, what he truly meant by it and everything like that. There's been multiple debates about Bob McNair in terms of, he wasn't really talking about the players. He was talking about the administration and the owner and the commissioner and everything like that, and who all works for him, and et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of people are debating, he still should have used better choice of words and everything like that. And Bob McNair has already got on the air and on television, well, not on television, but he has got on the air and he has already apologized for what he said moving forward. So I'm not even going to get off into whether he meant it or not, whether he used the wrong choice of words and everything like that, because from what I was told by sources, he was really referring to inmates. We can't have inmates running to prison. Instead of prison, he was really meaning an asylum and everything like that. But nonetheless, there's only really one concern of mine and that's the kneeling aspect of it. Now, a lot of people had a problem with Jerry Jones and the fact that the Cowboys kneel, but they kneel before the national anthem and everything like that. And I had my concerns about that as well, but I still applauded Jerry Jones because at least unlike all the other owners, Jerry Jones actually came forward and took a stance as to how he feels about the protest and what his players are going to do moving forward. Because all the other owners, we weren't really sure. I mean, let's just be honest with that. Before Jerry Jones actually came out and actually spoke about it and actually told everyone where he stands in terms of the NFL protests and everything like that, with the other owners, we didn't really know. But nonetheless, the kneeling during the national anthem is my concern. And the reason why it's my concern is for that specific reason. Because once again, I mentioned on this show a while back, the theme of it has been hijacked by the president, NFL owners, coaches, and even players at this point. Because we're forgetting the message at hand in terms of what the kneeling for the national anthem meant in the first place. When Colin Kaepernick decided to do this last year in August of 2016, to be exact, we all knew what it was about: police brutality, social injustice, racial inequality, the whole nine. Now, the owners, the president, coaches, has hijacked the message and has now flipped it and made it about the flag, the soldiers, patriotism, and then disrespecting the flag and all this other mess that had nothing to do with Colin Kaepernick. The reason why he kneeled during the national anthem in the first place had nothing to do with that. But unfortunately, the message itself has now been hijacked. And they knew what they were doing. They knew exactly what they were doing. For some reason in this world, the world that we live in terms of a problem that is the lack of justice in the African American community and beyond, when there's a problem or anything dealing with that of some sort, what's the best way to not address it? Let's avoid it. Let's change the narrative of it. Therefore, I have an issue with the kneeling, because you're kneeling in response to what your owner said. Okay, but why kneel though? I just really want to know, do we really ever stop and take into consideration what the kneeling was meant to be about over a year ago? Because now we're kneeling for everything else that don't even have anything to do with it. I mean, you can kind of put it under the same umbrella, but Colin Kaepernick is sitting over in the corner like, well, damn, what up? Hello, hey, guys, what about me? I started this over a year ago. Now the message has been hijacked, and every time you feel a certain way, anytime somebody says something, you know, that's really just going to be the reality of NFL moving forward. That really is. That's really what the reality of the NFL is going to be moving forward. Anytime a player doesn't like something, anytime something is said or done that a player doesn't like, that may have came from either the coaches or the owners itself, that's what they're going to do. They're going to show up on Sunday and kneel during the national anthem. I mean, my goodness, it's just this ongoing just saga that, you know, hey, let's just kneel for that. Hey, look, that ought to be a commercial at this point. I mean, I'm not even trying to be an a-hole or anything like that, but at the end of the day, I feel like this is going to be a commercial. You don't like anything? Kneel for the national anthem. I mean, like, come on now. If we're going to do it, let's just do it right. Or let's just not do it at all. I hate to be cynical about this, and I hate to, but at the end of the day, that's just what it is. I mean, that just goes back to the NFL owners and coaches and players meeting with Roger Goodell, the NFL commissioner, about the issue at hand. I mean, does that not really trip you out? I mean, actually meeting, and according to Roger Goodell, actually wants to get down to the bottom of it. I mean, from what I've been told, sources said that, I mean, nothing really got resolved. But Roger Goodell actually wanted to meet with players and coaches and owners and actually get down to the bottom of it. I mean, it actually made me laugh when I thought about it because at the end of the day, if I know Roger Goodell, you know good and damn well you could care less about the true reason as to why players, majority African Americans, are kneeling during the national anthem anyway. The only thing you care about are dollar signs. And the fact that NFL players kneeling during the national anthem is affecting the bottom line. Do you know the ratings for Sunday Night Football were less than the World Series? Because they happened on the same night. And this isn't the first time that that's happened. There were more ratings. In other words, more people were watching the Houston Astros and the LA Dodgers play than watching Sunday football. And this is the first thing that has happened. It's not the first time that has happened. But nonetheless, players, in response to their owner, Bob McNair, decided to kneel during the national anthem in terms of responding to what he had to say in terms of the comment as far as we can't have inmates running the prison, translation, the asylum, and everything like that. It's just this ongoing saga that's just really getting ridiculous, and in my opinion, it's really getting out of control. It really is. It's really getting out of control. If you're Roger Goodell, either do one or two things. Either shut up about it or just go ahead and make the rule. Because they're trying to – it's like they're poking at it now. What I mean by the rule is just make the rule in terms of players can't kneel during the national anthem. If you kneel during the national anthem, you get a fine or you get suspended or whatever have you. Just go ahead and make the rule because their sources are telling me that they're kind of poking at the rule right now. Like, we're considering it. We're meeting with NFL owners and players and coaches to try to get down to the bottom line. But on the flip side of it, we're considering making it a rule, just as it is in the NBA, that you cannot kneel, sit, squat, or whatever during the national anthem. And my response to that is just go ahead and make the rule. That way we can all move on with our lives because at the end of the day, there won't have to be no more debate about it, at least on my end, because the rule is a rule, and there's nothing you can do to change that. But we're going to move on in terms of the players from the Houston Texans kneeling during the national anthem in response to their owner, Bob McNair. And speaking of the Texans and Seattle game. Seattle survives Houston. I say that specifically because they survived the Houston Texans. I never thought I ever have to say a team ever surviving Houston and the Texans, but unfortunately, I have to say that. The Seattle Seahawks survived the Houston Texans by the score of 41-38. Now, I'm just going to be clear about this. No way, absolutely, positively not am I a fan of the Houston Texans. I'm from Dallas. Are you kidding me? Of course not. I mean, it would be detrimental to my soul for me to be a Houston Texans fan. I mean, my people would never forgive me. I can never return home. It would be the end of that. I can never return to Dallas ever again. But I have to give credit where credit is due. And Deshaun Watson is a bad man. Watson was 19 for 30 for 402 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. On the flip side of that, Russell Wilson was 26 for 41 for 452 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Now, before I actually dive off into it and actually explain how Houston lost that game, I just want to state this. Everybody's talking about Deshaun Watson and just how great he's been. I know I talked about this with Erin in the early part of the show because she was a guest, and I know she loved Deshaun Watson and everything like that. But everybody's talking about Deshaun Watson and how great he's been, how excellent he's been over the past few weeks. And in most cases, they're correct. Hell, I've even said it too here in Outspoken. I mean, the brother can seriously ball. But in that game on Saturday, here's what I noticed. that game this past Saturday between the Seattle Seahawks and the Houston Texans, that was more of a statement game by Russell Wilson. That's what that was. As I'm watching the game, I'm noticing one thing, and that's Russell Wilson letting you guys know, hey, number one, I'm Russell Wilson. Everything that Deshaun Watson is doing right now, I've been doing up to this point. And number two, I'm an elite quarterback in the National Football League. I'll be damned if I let a rookie quarterback outshine me and beat me. That is not about to happen, not on my watch. That is what I observe when I watch that game. Because there's a flip side to it. Now, don't get me wrong. Deshaun Watson was 19 for 30 for 402 yards and 4 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. Now, Russell Wilson also threw for over 400 yards as well. That's true. But nonetheless, Russell Wilson's looked better. His 402-yard passing compared to Deshaun Watson's, it just looked better. I'm sorry. I mean, the numbers are there. He was 452 yards for 4 touchdowns and only 1 interception. Deshaun Watson, on the other hand, threw four touchdowns, but also 3 interceptions. Turnovers are very costly in a football game, but nonetheless, that's where his looked better. Now, to jump off into where Houston actually lost that game, this is what happened in my opinion. I'm going to be perfectly clear about this. On the previous drive, not the drive after not the drive after Seattle scored to make the score 41-38, not that drive. The drive before that, when the Houston Texans were up 38-34. Here, in my opinion, is where Houston lost the game. On first down, you give it to Lamar Miller, of course. He gets about a yard. Timeout called by Seattle. 2nd and 9. They give it to Lamar Miller again for 5 yards. Another timeout by Seattle. That's the second timeout. On 3rd and 4, yes, you give it to Lamar Miller again up the middle for a couple of yards. Another timeout by Seattle. That's the third timeout. Now, it's 4th and 2, and they have to punt the ball away. Deshaun Watson has been your heart and your soul this entire game, this entire season. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love Lamar. I like Lamar Miller. I like him. I really do. He's an excellent, excellent running back. He can be on anybody's team in the league as of now. I enjoy watching Lamar Miller play. But Lamar Miller isn't Deshaun Watson. And I'm saying that in comparison to a rookie who just got in the league. Deshaun Watson has been special for you if you're the Houston Texans up to this point. When the game is on the line, not only do you give it to your superstar, because they're both superstars, but you give it to the guy that has gotten you to that point. That's who you give it to. That's how Seattle lost the damn Super Bowl against the New England Patriots. You got beast mode on your team. You get to the damn goal line and you run a slant route. I mean, are you kidding me? One of the easiest routes to jump a ball. That's the easiest route. If it was a fade route or anything like that, it was a slant route. You know how easy it is to jump a slant route at the goal line if you're a cornerback? You give it to the guy that's been doing the dirty work for you up to that point. And Deshaun Watson was the guy that has been doing the dirty work for the Houston Texans up to this point. Deshaun Watson was the only reason why the Houston Texans were even in the ball game to begin with. You do not take it out of the hands of the superstar that has gotten it to you up to that point. That's how they lost the game, because they took it out of the hands of Deshaun Watson. Therefore, they had to punt the ball, and they gave it back to Seattle with under 2 minutes to go. Seattle's down 38-34. It only took not 1, not 2, but 3 plays, 80 yards. 3 plays, 80 yards. Russell Wilson gets it done again for Seattle to make the score 41-38. Now, Houston gets the ball back. With still less than a minute to go. They still have a little bit of time. And what happens? He throws an interception. That's what happens. At that point, the game was over. There's nothing else he can do about it. He threw an interception. Richard Sherman came up big for the secondary of Seattle to seal the victory for them. And speaking of Seattle, I want to mention this. I can't take them off the hook. The fact that Deshaun Watson threw for over 400 yards. Yeah, he threw interceptions. He threw 3 interceptions. I get all that, but he threw for over 400 yards against Seattle's secondary. Can somebody explain to me how that happened? I really want to know. The call-in number is 469-474-9370. I really want to know, how does that happen? Because think about it. That's highly unusual for the secondary of the Seattle Seahawks for a quarterback to throw for over 400 yards against their secondary. I mean, come on. I mean, Richard Sherman, Earl Thomas, Cam Chancellor. I mean, come on, guys. I mean, damn. I mean, I understand Richard Sherman ended with 2 interceptions the entire ball game, but Earl Thomas, Cam Chancellor, I mean, come on, guys. That's a big, big question mark for me moving forward. The fact that you allow that many yards by a rookie quarterback, I understand he's Deshaun Watson, but he's still a rookie. He is still a rookie. For it to allow him to throw for over 402 yards against your secondary is highly, highly unusual. But nonetheless, Houston fell short by the score of 41-38. And honestly, things are honestly still looking good for them in the AFC South. I'm just going to throw that out there before I move on. I mean, I understand that the Jacksonville Jaguars are looking great right now. They're looking the flip side of their organization. I mean, it's really looking pretty good for them. But I've said it before, and I'll say it again. As long as Blake Bortles is still the quarterback for the Jacksonville Jaguars, Houston still has a shot to come out on top in the AFC South. I'm just going to leave it at that. I had to get Houston out the way so I can get to my Cowboys as we are 40 minutes past the hour here on Outspoken. I want to get to my Cowboys. Defeating the Washington Redskins by the score of 33-19. Improving to 4-3 on the season and number 2 in the NFC East by the Philadelphia Eagles, who has only lost 1 game this entire season, the best record in the NFL, 1 game behind them. Ezekiel Elliott had over 150 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. He looked great. The D-line was phenomenal. And I'm gonna get on them here, and I'm gonna get on them here in just a moment. But I want to clear the discussion that's been sprinkling in the air in terms of comparison to Dak Prescott and Deshaun Watson. I just want to address it here for just a moment and be done with it, because it's really starting to annoy me. It really is. Number one, they're two different quarterbacks. They really are. There's been a lot of argument in terms of Dak Prescott and whether or not he can throw the ball down the field in comparison to Deshaun Watson. And everyone's saying that Deshaun Watson has a better arm than Dak Prescott. He's more mobile than Dak Prescott. Therefore, Deshaun Watson is your better quarterback. He's your better fit for the position. I'm just going to say this. It's all about location. It really is. In the system. You got to remember, Dak Prescott came from Mississippi State. I'm not saying that's a bad football program, but Deshaun Watson came from Clemson, who just won the national title against Alabama, Roll Tide, against Nick Saban. Okay? That's number one. Number two, it's the system that Dak is playing in. I'm not saying if he went to another system, then we'll just see a flip side of him in terms of his arm through the air that we've never seen before. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying to you is this. It's the system that Dak Prescott is playing in. What I mean by that is the offense of the Dallas Cowboys as of now, is not designed to throw the ball. And it surely is not designed to throw the ball downfield. That's number one. Number two, the offense is designed to run the ball. When Dallas is running the ball successfully, they are having success on offense, controlling the clock, controlling the ball, keeping the opposing team's offense off the field. That's the difference. And teams are starting to notice that because they say, you know what? We're going to put everybody in the box. We're going to stop the run. We're going to stop Zeke at the line of scrimmage. We're going to force Dak Prescott and Dallas to throw the ball. The problem that lies with that is if Dak is forced to throw the ball, that is a problem because that's not the design of the offense. The offense is designed to run the ball on first down, to run the ball on second down. And depending on the spot of the ball, if it's 5 yards and in, we're going to run the ball on third down. Jason Garrett and that entire offense are old school. It's old-fashioned. They believe in smash-mouth football. Run the ball down the opposing team's throat, manage the clock, manage the ball, and to be honest with you, not have to throw the damn ball as much as possible. Why you think guys like Jason Witten and Terrence Newman and Dez Bryant only finish? If they finish with over 60 yards receiving after a game, that means we couldn't run the ball. That means we can't run the ball. And as I mentioned before, Ezekiel Elliott had 33 carries for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. 33 carries. Just think about that for a moment. You really think a team that's giving their running back the ball 33 times a game is looking to throw the ball? No, absolutely, positively not. They're not looking to throw the ball. They're looking to run the ball. 33 carries? Think about that. They ain't trying to run the ball. They ain't trying to throw the ball. They're trying to run the ball. And if Dak Prescott is forced to throw, there's a problem. Because that means the running game is not working. No. On first down, run the ball. Second down, run the ball. If Dak has to throw the ball beyond 10 yards, that's a problem. It should be 7 yards and in. 7 yards and in. And I understand that some may question his throwing ability in terms of downfield because if you really watch the game and you analyze the game when Dallas plays, how often does Dak Prescott check down to the wire, check down to the running back? How often does he throw the check down pass? I'll answer that for you. Almost every single play. Statistically speaking, Dak Prescott would check down to a wide receiver over 70% of the time he drop backs to pass the ball. Over 70% of the time. You know what that tells you? That he is not looking to throw the ball downfield. He's not looking for that. That's not what he was brought in to do. And honestly, one may even argue that that's not really if he's really capable of doing it. One would argue. But at the same time, I can also argue that who do we really have on the team that can really run deep? Honestly, who do we really have on the Dallas wide receiving core that's really designed? I'm talking about your Antonio Browns and your Julio Jones and your Odell Beckham Jr.'s when he was healthy and he was playing in the game. Who do Dallas really have that can honestly run deep and get those deep balls? There's really only one person you can argue for that, and it ain't Terrence Williams. It ain't even Bryce Butler. If Bryce Butler is wide open down the field, it was a blown coverage. Somebody screwed up in the secondary of that defense. One would may argue that is Dez. One would seriously argue that it's Dez Bryant. But unfortunately, in my opinion, Dez Bryant is just too damn inconsistent for that category. I'm sorry. I can't give it to him. I can't give it to him. I just can't. Because he's too damn inconsistent in terms of catching the damn ball for me to even consider him as a possible candidate for that position. I just can't. So in terms of that, Dallas, we don't really have anybody that can do such things. So, as long as the running game is strong, as long as Ezekiel Elliott is getting over 100 yards a game and 25-plus carries, because he's going to do so, they're going to feed him at least 25 times a game. That's just out of the question. That's why it took them 2 or 3 drafts to make the offensive line strong and then finally go after a running back. They had it all planned out. That's why from 2013, 2014, and beyond, we were drafting offensive linemen in the first round of the draft. Hell, it all makes sense now. You can't have a strong running game without a strong offensive line. I mean, it don't take a brain surgeon to figure that out. And then once you get the offensive line strong, okay, we're going to draft a running back in the first round. They did that by drafting Ezekiel Elliott at the 4th spot last year, and it has worked out for them up to this point. So that's the bottom line dealing with that. At the end of the day, in terms of comparison, in my opinion, there really isn't much to compare because they're 2 different quarterbacks in 2 different systems. It just doesn't work. No matter how much you try to draw it up, no matter how much you try to analyze it or break it down detail for detail, it just doesn't work. And ladies and gentlemen, as to what I was explaining earlier of the show in terms of politics and everything that's dealing with the sport of football itself, other than the actual game, other stuff that's going on outside the game that we have to address. And another one has came up. Jerry Jones and 17 NFL owners were on a conference call Thursday, and they discussed the possibility of halting Commissioner Roger Goodell's pending contract extension. The owners on Thursday's conference call were generally unhappy with Goodell and the NFL's front office for a variety of reasons, including the player protests staged during the national anthem, issues regarding the relocation of teams to Los Angeles and the league's handling of the Ray Rice domestic violence case, according to sources. And I quote, "You don't get to have this many messes over the years like Roger has had and survive it," one owner said during the call. You know, I can't say that I saw this coming because I'm be honest with you, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm just gonna throw this out there. I mean, I haven't really been a fan of Roger Goodell as an NFL commissioner since he's been there myself. And I'm not even a player. I'm just a fan of the game, and I really haven't been a fan of his either. But in his defense, what messes? And what I mean by that is everything that they're pointing out, can you honestly, truly, I mean, seriously, think about this for a moment. Can you really blame that on the NFL commissioner himself? I mean, seriously. Just from what they're talking about in terms of the player protest during the national anthem, the relocation of teams to Los Angeles in terms of the Rams and everything like that, and the Chargers. I mean, that was just from San Diego to LA, but nonetheless, can you really? And they mentioned the Ray Rice domestic violence case. I mean, can you honestly, truly blame the NFL commissioner of all these problems? I mean, just be honest. I mean, they did kind of get burned with the domestic violence case, but that's only because that was actually caught on tape. And they actually had the tape for a while and actually made it seem like they didn't have it or didn't know anything about it, when all along, not only did they know about it, they actually had the tape for a mighty long time. But nonetheless, can you really truly blame him? I mean, seriously, in terms of the domestic violence, that's not Roger Goodell's fault. Ultimately, that's the person that committed the violence, the violent act, and that would be Ray Rice. That would be his fault. Hell, we saw what happened with that. That was all on tape. I mean, you banged the head up against the wall and you dragged it out the elevator. I mean, we saw all that on tape. That's out of the question. Everything else, the player protest, can you honestly, truly, truly blame that on the commissioner? He's not the one that started this. And what I mean by that is that's not throwing any shade at Colin Kaepernick for starting this movement back in 2006, even though the issue at hand got hijacked. And we're not even talking about Colin Kaepernick and why he started in 2016. It was in response to what the president said about NFL owners and players and how owners and coaches should sit players out of the game if they kneel during the national anthem. They shouldn't play and everything like that. Then to clap back at the president, you kneel during the national anthem. All of that transpired during the first few weeks of the NFL. Can you honestly, truly blame Roger Goodell? The fact that the ratings of the NFL has went down because of this. The fact that more people were looking at the World Series on Sunday than NFL Sunday, can you blame that on Roger Goodell? The fact that all Roger Goodell really cares about is his bottom line, and the fact that the NFL protest is affecting dollars, can you really blame that on Roger Goodell? Let's be honest. You got a lot of people that are supporters of the NFL that spends a lot of money every year on the NFL that are not in support of the NFL protest. In other words, when they show up to the game, they don't want to see players kneel during the national anthem. And if they continue to see it, they won't show up to the game. I've heard people say they're not watching the game because of it, so that's ratings right there. And can you blame Roger Goodell for trying to put a cap on it that say, hey, look, guys, I seriously have nothing to do with the way that you feel about the fact that the flag itself isn't being represented by what it stood for and what it stands for in the first place in terms of equality and every injustice and everything like that. I have nothing to do with that. I just want to let you know, and that's one thing that Jerry Jones was letting his players know, that, hey, kneeling for the national anthem is affecting our bottom line and it's affecting our money. And I'm going to let you know right now, the one thing I know about wealthy people, they like to stay wealthy. In other words, they don't want anything, or they don't want to deal with anything that could possibly jeopardize them from getting their money. And that's what the NFL protest is doing. So when you take all of that in consideration, can you honestly, truly, truly blame Roger Goodell and where he stands with that? Just a question. Just a question. Moving right along. As we wrap up the NFL, my favorite part of the show, and if you listening, you think I was, if you didn't think I was going to talk about them, you're dead wrong. But you should be happy. They took care of business on Sunday Night Football. I mean, they had to. I mean, you gave them Sunday Night Football. That means I have nothing else to watch other than the World Series. But nonetheless, I have nothing else to watch in terms of football but y'all. I'm forced to watch it. So, in other words, you better damn well have taken care of business. And they did just that. The Pittsburgh Steelers taking care of the Detroit Lions by the score of 20-15. And they got by the skin of their teeth. It was the ugliest, pure ugliest score that I've ever seen in my life. But that's nothing getting on them because I got to get to the positives. I have to get to the positives, but I just want to throw it out there, the fact that they lost by it. They won by an ugly, ugly score, that being 20-15. But nonetheless, and I'm very disappointed that the highest paid player in the league, that being Matthew Stafford, couldn't get the damn job done. You get in the red zone more than once, and you just shut down. I mean, that's just piss poor, in my opinion. But who am I? He's the highest paid player in the league, right? He's the highest paid player. Has not won a playoff game since he's been in the league, but he's the highest paid player. So, moving right along. Juju Smith of the Pittsburgh Steelers goes off, ladies and gentlemen. 7 receptions for 193 yards and a touchdown. He had a 97-yard run for a touchdown late in the fourth quarter. This dude was unstoppable. He was unbelievable. That's the best game I've ever seen Juju Smith play. Now, I'm not even a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. I ain't really a Juju Smith fan. I mean, I've been a fan of him over the past few weeks, past couple of days. I'm glad he got his bike. I'm glad he got his bike back. And I was a fan for him, and I was an advocate for him of getting that and getting everything like that squared away. But in terms of the controversy that has happened between Juju Smith and Martavis Bryant calling out Juju Smith originally on Twitter and then deleting that tweet and then posting another response after that stating that Juju Smith is an excellent wide receiver. He's a superstar. I really hope he get his. He's going to be great. I just want to get mine. That was a cleanup statement from what he said before, really calling out how he truly felt about Juju Smith. A lot of people didn't know that, but that's because he deleted it. But I saw it. Taking all that into consideration, what does this mean for Martavis Bryant? If those of you that watched the game, if you didn't, that was okay, because I understand the World Series were going on at the same time. But if you watched the game, Martavis Bryant originally he was demoted to the practice squad. And then sources came out on Friday or Saturday, he was not going to be in the game against the Detroit Lions. He wasn't going to play. And we saw that. Hell, not even playing. He didn't even suit up. He was in street clothes. He was on the sideline. And they made sure on purpose to put the camera on Martavis Bryant more than once during that game. And we saw it. And we saw how great Juju Smith was, finishing with 193 yards and a touchdown, a 97-yard run for a touchdown in the fourth quarter. So, with all that being said, what does this mean for Martavis Bryant moving forward? In my opinion, he's gone. I hate to say this, but he's gone. And there's only really one thing to describe it, and his name is Juju Smith. Because at first, don't get me wrong, Juju Smith is very talented. But me personally, I've known how good of a wide receiver Martavis Bryant has been up to this point. Now, keep in mind, he didn't play last year. For those of you that remember, the same thing that David Stern, ex-commissioner of the NBA, is suggesting that they take the ban off. That they take the ban off of. Martavis Bryant didn't play for smoking the weed last year, and he didn't play in 2016. Now he came back this year. But that's why he was suspended for a year. Moving forward, before that, I knew how talented he was as a wide receiver. Honestly, in my opinion, it's really just sad of the position that he's in. Because don't get me wrong, I can't reiterate this enough. Martavis Bryant is actually a very talented wide receiver. Because if the dude just flat out sucked, we wouldn't even really be discussing it. But that's not the issue in my opinion. The issue is the fact that he's under the shadow of Antonio Brown. Now, you got some receivers that will say, you know what, I'm just going to play my role. Because that's what really Martavis Bryant is. He's a role player. You got some wide receivers that will say, you know what, I'll just play my role. I'll let Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown lead me to the AFC Championship, which they ultimately, in my opinion, will face the New England Patriots, and then possibly the Super Bowl. Who knows? Not keeping my fingers crossed because I can care less about the Pittsburgh Steelers, but nonetheless. But then you have wide receivers like Martavis Bryant to say, you know what? I get all that, and I could just shadow him and ride his coattail to the AFC Championship. That's ultimately what he would do. He would just be riding the coattail of Antonio Brown. He would just be in the back seat. He'll be in the car, but he wouldn't be driving, and he damn sure wouldn't be in the passenger seat because Ben Roethlisberger is driving. Antonio Brown's in the passenger seat. He would just be riding the coattail. He doesn't want to do that, and a lot of people are hating him for it, and honestly, in my opinion, I don't. Now, I would argue, good luck being successful elsewhere. I wish the best for you. The chances are probably aren't that high, but I get his reasoning. In my opinion, it's the same thing that Kyrie Irving did this past summer. Now, no way in shape, form, or fashion am I trying to compare Martavis Bryant to Kyrie Irving because the two just don't compare at all. What I'm saying is the message that comes with it. When Kyrie Irving decided that he wanted to leave Cleveland, it had nothing to do with the team itself because we all know the Cleveland Cavaliers are going to make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. We all know that. In the NBA Finals as well. We all know that. But it's the fact that he felt like as an elite player, he got sick and tired of being in the shadows of LeBron James, because even though you're on a very successful team, and even though your chances of making it to the NBA Finals every year are high because you got the best player in the league, it doesn't matter, because as an elite player that you feel like you are, you rather take your chances and go to another team and be the top dog of that team and not ride the coattail of somebody else to make it to the championship. That's what Kyrie Irving would be doing if he stayed with LeBron James, even though he's an elite point guard. That's what Martavis Bryant would do if he stays on the Pittsburgh Steelers with Antonio Brown, the second best in my opinion. The second best wide receiver in the league. The first best is Julio Jones. That's neither here nor there discussion. But a top 5 wide receiver in the league that's going to get the ball majority of the game. Because to be honest, if Ben Roethlisberger was spreading the love, and what I mean by spreading the love between Martavis Bryant and Juju Smith and Antonio Brown, we wouldn't even be talking about this. We wouldn't. But let's just be honest. Martavis Bryant, if he stays with Pittsburgh, would be lucky to get the ball 5 times a game. Seriously. He would seriously be lucky. So, as I stated before, what does this mean for Martavis Bryant? That means he's gone. Because Pittsburgh just found with a stamp on it. What I mean by stamp on it, I mean they kind of knew that Juju Smith was good and they could possibly keep him for a long period of time. But last night was the cherry on top. And that much needed win for them against Detroit, finishing with 193 yards and a touchdown, a 97-yard run in the fourth quarter, solidified the fact that, you know what, we'll get rid of Martavis Bryant. He's gone because we have Juju Smith. So, what's at stake for him? Bye-bye, Martavis Bryant. You finally now can get what you want, and we hope, in my opinion, I hope the brother lands somewhere productive. I seriously do. So, we are just about out of time, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank you all so much for joining us. 2 things we really didn't get to today. I just quickly want to mention that the Houston Astros rallied to a 12-13 win over the LA Dodgers and are now up in the series. It's 3-2. Houston Astros are now up. I had the LA Dodgers winning the World Series, whether the Houston Astros or the New York Yankees. Whether either one of those teams made it to the World Series, I said L.A. Dodgers are going to be waiting for them because they got that one man that is Kershaw. And I said that because they have him, the L.A. Dodgers was going to be the Houston Astros or the New York Yankees in the World Series. But now I don't know. Now I seriously don't know. This is the second time that the Houston Astros have done this, have turned these games into an interesting ball game. And that's what they did last night. Kershaw struggled in the 5th inning. He seriously did. And that 5th inning, in my opinion, is where the L.A. Dodgers won the game. But nonetheless, the Houston Astros rallied to a 12-13 win over the L.A. Dodgers and are now leading in the World Series 3-2. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, I have to say goodbye. We are out of time. I want to thank you all so much for joining us on the show. As we always come to you live every Monday and Thursday from the 2nd floor of the Memorial Student Center, better known as the MSC, and through the airways of the Open Mic Broadcast Network. You have been listening to the sports edition of the Outspoken Podcast. For my main man, my guy, the creator, the CEO himself, Dr. Mike Prince, I am your host, Andre Davis. Thank you all so much for joining us. Join us on Thursday again for the sports edition of Outspoken through the airways of the Open Mic Broadcast Network, and we will see you next time.